Exposed. 12 spine-chilling ghost stories revealed from haunted places. Unexplained terror awaits. The Johnson family thought they had finally escaped their crumbling financial life when they moved to a seemingly perfect home in a quiet suburb of Kansas City. A charming two-story with white shutters and a picket fence stood before them, almost too idyllic to be real. Yet, in the shadows of that perfect place, a terror awaited, lurking just beyond the line of sight. It began with flickering lights that danced like taunting phantoms, whispers echoing through the hallways, echoing like dropped stones in a silent pond. 15-year-old Sarah Johnson felt the first tremors of unease while exploring her new home, an innocent thrill quickly turning into dread as shadows shifted just out of view. Her parents, Melissa and David, were preoccupied with their newfound stability, but Sarah's delicate senses picked up on the house's chilling ambience. At first, David dismissed her fears. "It's just an adjustment," he said, shrugging off his daughter's anxious chatter. But he couldn't ignore the air thickening around them, an unsettling presence always lingering, waiting. One evening, while peering into the darkness of her room, Sarah felt cold fingers pinch the back of her neck. She screamed, but Melissa rushed in, brushing it off. "It's just a draft, honey." But Sarah knew. This was more than just a chill. A constant weight pressed against her heart as she began documenting the strange happenings in her journal, each entry crackling with a sense of foreboding. The tone shifted and darkened with every word, reflecting nightmares that now seemed too real to ignore. One afternoon, curiosity led Sarah to their neighbor, Mr. Thompson, a frail man with silver hair that glinted in the sunlight, often seen mowing his lawn with a gentle smile. But today, his friendly facade flickered when he mentioned the previous owners. Tragic, really? They just vanished. Sarah's skin crawled as an uncomfortable tension wrapped around her thoughts. Inexplicable but commanding. Had Mr. Thompson seen something? Did he know more than he revealed? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue that night. As storms clashed and rage swept through the sky, darkness enveloped their home. A sudden blackout plunged them into an abyss where even faint breath felt like a threat. The air dropped to frigid temperatures, goosebumps prickling Sarah's flesh. Shadows stretched unnaturally, playing tricks on their nerves, and a grating silence fell over them, alive with whispers that snaked through the dark. In the ensuing chaos, David and Melissa argued, fear wrapping around their voices like a noose while shadows danced around them. Crashes echoed from the kitchen, sending dread swimming in their veins. Sarah's heart raced as she groped for her flashlight. Shining it into the living room, she froze. A figure lurked at the far end, indistinct yet heavy with foreboding. It turned towards her, a face obscured by darkness but holding an unmistakable intent. Tension tightened like a wound spring. With dawn hours away, the Johnson family was poised on a precipice, teetering between unraveling truth and unresolved terror. The air felt electric with horror. They could feel it, the darkness from their past and the unknown tragedy. Would they uncover the truth before it closed in around them, binding them to an eternal haunting? Or would they fall victim to the shadows that clung to them like desperation, lost in a chilling tale that refused to let go? Sarah's breathing quickened, the air thick with dread. The figure in the living room moved closer, swallowing the dim light from her flashlight. Her heart thudded in her ears, every instinct urging her to flee. She fought to keep her feet planted, desperation anchoring her in place. The face twisted in shadows was familiar, yet alien, an echo of something lurking beneath the surface. "Sarah?" It rasped, a chilling whisper that crawled over her skin. She recognized the voice, a sinister echo of her own. A raw panic welled inside her as the realization hit. This wasn't just the darkness aiming to drive her mad. It was part of her, embedded in every corner of her mind. Her terrified gaze flicked back to her parents, who were still engaged in a volatile argument. "We can't stay here. This house is wrong," Melissa cried, her voice cracking. "You're frightening the children, Mel." David shot back, his frustration turning to annoyance, unable to see the shadows that hovered just beyond sight. But Sarah saw. She saw the multiple shadows reaching out with long, grasping fingers. They twisted, beckoning her, tangling their whispers around her head like a spiderous web. The low murmurs filled the room, blending with the storm outside. It transformed into a cacophony, each syllable scraping against her sanity. "Help me," the figure implored, the words louder now, laced with an urgent desperation. Sarah's blood ran cold. It was pulling her to the edge of a mystery that tasted of fear and neglect. What had happened to the previous owners? "You shouldn't have come here." The figure faded momentarily, allowing her to breathe, but it returned, a looming presence staring straight through her. An icy gust swept through the room, sending a shiver up Sarah's spine as the lights flickered violently above. "Sarah!" David yelled, pulling her back from her trance. The moment of clarity shattered. The entity flickered, revealing bits of its horrific form: a misaligned jaw, hollow eyes, and jagged limbs. Terror clawed at Sarah's throat. She couldn't look away. Without thinking, Sarah bolted towards her parents, fear eclipsing every thought. "We need to leave," she shouted, her voice breaking through the overwhelming whispers. But when she turned back to the figure, it was gone, leaving behind a lingering chill that saturated the air like death. "Leave? Leave where?" David scoffed, trying to bring a semblance of normality to the chaos. "We just bought this house. It's our home now." "No, it's not safe," Melissa screamed, her panic palpable. Shadows coiled around them like serpents, playfully tightening their grip. Sarah felt the tension shifting as their fear coalesced into something dark and dreadful, an energy that expanded as if feeding off their apprehension. "Breathe, just breathe," Sarah told herself, but it was hard when everything felt intertwined with hostile forces. Suddenly, an ear-splitting crash echoed from the kitchen. The sound shattered their frantic conversation, and they all froze, entranced by the ominous threat, each of them wondering if it was the house itself pouring out its rage. "Stay here," David demanded, but his voice quivered, the authority undermined by sheer panic. He stepped towards the kitchen, each stride heavy with dread. Sarah felt sick with fear, a chill racing through her veins as the light dimmed again. Then she felt it. Cold fingers brushed against her arm, making her freeze in place. "Turn around," the voice echoed, more insistent this time. It clawed at her, pulling her towards that fragile line between her reality and something far darker. She looked back, and the figure emerged once more with clarity. The face was now unmistakable. "Help us finish it." And in that moment, Sarah knew. She was tied to this house, tied to its terrible history, and whatever darkness hid within its walls wanted her to investigate its past, or become another tragedy woven into its fabric. As the door to the kitchen swung open, shadows surged forward, hungry and alive. The night felt heavier now, oppressive as questions swirled in Sarah's mind. What wanted them to stay? What would happen next? The storm outside raged louder, and they were caught in a tempest far more dreadful than the thunder above. Would they succumb to their fear or fight against the haunting truth that gripped their lives? The flickering lights cast one final shadow, an invitation to the unknown. The moment of truth was about to pierce the veil. What would they unleash when they faced what lay ahead? David stepped into the kitchen, his heart pounding louder than the thunder outside. A suffocating silence enveloped him, broken only by the haunting creaks of the old house settling. The air felt electrified, anticipation sparking along his skin. Before him lay a scene that would seal their fate. The lights flickered again, revealing the fragments of a dinner long abandoned. Broken dishes decorated the floor like tombstones, remnants of a life once lived. Silverware gleamed ominously, and amidst it all, the rancid smell of rot permeated the air. David's pulse quickened. Fear was transforming into sickening dread. Behind him, Sarah and Melissa exchanged terrified glances, trapped like deer in headlights. Melissa called out, her voice trembling. He could hear her footsteps shuffle nervously as she peered around the door frame, but curiosity mingled with fear. "Stay back," he shouted, urgency breaching the surface of his terror. His voice echoed in the empty kitchen, swallowed by chaos. And then he saw it, a figure partly veiled by shadows, crouched near the sink. It was the same faceless echo Sarah had seen, but now it was a silhouette twisted unnaturally, bending and warping, weaving through shadows with a grace that defied reality. "Join us," it whispered, a sound so soft it was barely audible. But the invitation dripped with darkness, a call to the void. David's instinct screamed at him to turn and flee, but his feet felt glued to the ground. Behind him, he could sense the heaviness in the room growing, a weight that pulled at his very soul. The kitchen felt like a tomb, every corner darkened by secrets kept too long. "David!" Sarah's voice cut through the haze. She was coming closer now, against his protests. "What is that? What do they want?" Before he could respond, the lights fizzled violently, plunging them into momentary darkness. In that instant, the whispers escalated into furious howls. Shadows danced on the walls. A living tapestry writhed in anguish. "Help us finish it," the voice cried, louder, piercing deep into David's psyche. He felt something clawing at his mind, a feverish desperation that threatened to snap him in half. The hunger of the shadows became palpable, feeding off their fear as it tightened around them like a noose. Suddenly, Melissa shouted, "Get out! We have to get out!" Panic surged in her voice, the authority of survival igniting her resolve. David turned just in time to see her frozen in shock at the doorway, eyes wide in horror. His heart dropped as he turned back to the figure now towering inches from him, its features twisting clearer, a merging of familiar faces and grotesque forms. They looked back at him, eyes wide with blame, their mouths moving in choreographed agony. David couldn't breathe. The walls seemed to close in, reality warping, suffocating. "It's too late," came a voice, this time distinctly Sarah's, though distorted and cracked, sounding as though it was pulled from the depths of despair. The room began to spin. Suddenly, a resounding crash shook the house. A window shattered, and rain poured in, a furious cascade mingling with the terror inside. The icy droplets clung to his skin, grounding him momentarily. As the lights flickered and died completely, plunging them into inky darkness, David knew it was a matter of moments before the shadows would rise. "Run!" he yelled, feeling the surge of primal instinct awaken within him. He grabbed Sarah's wrist and pulled, Melissa right on their heels as they sprinted past the figure which was now transforming, twisting into a tendril of darkness that reached for them. As they crossed the threshold from the kitchen, an overwhelming force pushed against their backs, nearly sending them tumbling. They stumbled into the living room, where the argument between their parents had ceased. They stood frozen, eyes locked on the entrance as shadows crept over the floor, encircling their feet like hungry snakes. "Don't look back," Sarah shouted, and before David could process her words, they were lunging for the front door. It had swung open, revealing a staircase spiraling into abyss, a spiral of uncertainty and horror. With a final glance at the house's helix of horrors, the unknown beckoning from below, David hesitated. "What if we're not safe out there either?" His voice wavered, doubt clawing at his gut. But as the dark energy surged behind them, the choice was clear. They had to decide: follow that path to the unknown or brace against what lurked in the shadows of their home. With adrenaline surging, they stepped into the darkness and the shadows roared with fury. As the echoes of their screams faded into the night, the house shuddered, throwing them into a world they never anticipated, where truths waited to unravel and haunt them. The storm howled mercilessly, but it was nothing compared to what lay ahead. Everything was about to change. What awaited them in those shadows, they couldn't yet fathom, but they could feel it, closing in. They plunged into the darkness, the air thick with palpable dread. David's heart hammered against his ribs as they raced down the narrow staircase. Each step seemed endless, a descent into some forsaken underworld. Cold, damp air clung to their skin, an unnatural chill that seeped into their bones. "Keep going," Melissa urged, her voice barely more than a breath. The worn wood creaked beneath their hurried steps, a warning echoing against the walls. David could feel the darkness swirling, wrapping around them like the tendrils of that cursed figure. Just as they reached the bottom, splashes of water greeted their feet, slickening the surface beneath them. The dim outline of a hallway stretched before them, and the stench of mold mixed with something far worse, decay. "What is this place?" Sarah swirling around them, pulling tighter. David froze, terror clawing at him. Each heartbeat echoed the drum of demise. They needed to escape, but the truth locked in that box might also be their only hope. The shadows thickened, dancing hungrily around him, blocking their escape. His heartbeat quickened, caught between the choice of unveiling the horrors or being consumed whole by night itself. And then came a voice, clear and insistent, "Open it." With his pulse racing, David hesitated, wondering if this was the moment that would seal their fate, or if it would finally sever the ties that bound the spirits to this place. Could they unravel the mystery of the house, or were they stepping deeper into the jaws of terror? The pitch black swirled, ready to swallow them whole. The moment David touched the box, a surge of cold electricity coursed through his fingers. It was as if the very air crackled with anticipation, wrapping around him like icy tendrils. He grasped the box tighter, captivated yet terrified. The whispers intensified, each voice swelling with urgency, reverberating through the suffocating darkness. "Open it before it's too late," the plea sent a shiver down his spine. He glanced at Melissa and Sarah, their faces pale, mirroring his own terror. They were in this together, a trifecta of fear faced with something otherworldly. What if opening the box unleashed more than just the answers they desperately sought? "David!" Melissa shrieked, pointing toward the walls. Shadows twisted and morphed into grotesque silhouettes, eyes devoid of life glaring hungrily as if they reveled in their dread. "Do it!" Sarah screamed, her voice frayed with desperation. The walls seemed to pulse, alive with an unseen pressure that pressed in on them. They were trapped, the past clawing back to drag them into its depths unless they fought back with whatever the truth could offer. With a deep, shuddering breath, David lifted the lid. The moment the box cracked open, the room filled with a blinding light that contrasted sharply with the pitch darkness. Whirling shadows punctured the illumination, a chaotic blend that howled in furious outrage. From the center of the box, an object floated upwards, a small, misty orb that flickered like a dying star. Tendrils of light reached out around it, seeking a connection, a purpose. The whispers became a chorus, urging them, pleading, "Take it, it belongs to you." "What is it?" David muttered, entranced by the luminescence. "Looks like an offering," Melissa gasped, her eyes wide, reflecting the ethereal glow. "We have to make a choice before they take us." The box trembled as if recognizing their hesitation, pulsing with an urgent rhythm. The room's temperature plummeted, chills racing up David's arms. He could feel the shadows closing in, hungry for their flesh, for their fear. Together, David urged, looking at his friends. "On three." Nodding resolutely, they counted. 1, 2, 3. They reached out together, fingers brushing the surface of the orb just as the noise reached a deafening crescendo. A jolt of energy surged through them, vivid images crashing into their minds. Broken memories danced like specters. Laughter, sorrow, despair, each wrapped in a shroud of cries. They were fragments of lost lives, trapped in that orb, longing for release. Then, an awful screech echoed through the air, drowning out their thoughts. The shadows lunged, threatening to engulf them. Fear paralyzed David. "We need to let it go," he shouted. "No, we can't." Sarah's voice trembled, her expression torn between horror and hope. "What if it's our only chance?" Each moment stretched into eternity as the shadows clawed closer. David's pulse raced, blood roaring in his ears. He could feel the box shaking, the energy inside insisting, compelling them to stay. The orb brightened, illuminating not just the room, but casting faint reflections of their own images twisted and broken. An echo of their own fears, long buried. This is not just any light, David realized. It holds their pain, but it could also free us. With trembling breath, he gripped the orb, heart racing as he made a decision. We must speak their names. What? Melissa blinked, confusion simmering in her eyes. Is that even possible? But David nodded, summoning courage from deep within. We won't let them suffer anymore. We'll break the cycle. As they began to call out the names, the shadows recoiled, shrieking in fury. Stop! They begged in unison, a cacophony of anguish. But it was too late. Light burst forth, engulfing the room, a blinding eruption that threatened to shatter them. With the final name, a deafening silence followed. Only the echo of their own breaths remained. They were left in darkness once more, the orb now cold and lifeless. The house felt different, an eerie stillness settling in its wake. Did we do it? Sarah stammered, her voice trembling. David's heart thudded against the ache of uncertainty. I don't know. But then he heard it. A faint whisper from the shadows that remained. A dark promise creeping back into the edges. You have not escaped, you have awakened. The walls trembled once more, the quiet before a storm electrifying the atmosphere around them. Goosebumps raked over his skin as the realization settled in. The true horror still loomed, waiting on the other side of their decision. What had they truly unleashed? And how far would they have to run to escape? The silence was suffocating, pressing down on them like a heavy blanket. David felt a cold sweat break out across his brow as he glanced around the room. Shadows crept along the walls, twisting into shapes that seemed to watch them, hungrily awaiting the faintest glimmer of fear. We need to get out of here, Melissa said, her voice cracking. She stepped back, her eyes darting around, searching for an escape. Now, Sarah nodded but remained rooted in place, her gaze fixed on the lifeless orb, a fragile remnant of what moments before had pulsed with a haunting energy. What if it wasn't enough? What if we just made things worse? David clenched his fists, uncertainty gnawing at him. We can't stay here. They'll come for us. We need to move. The air grew thicker, almost viscous, as a low growl emanated from the shadows. It felt alive, vibrating with a chilling hunger that echoed deep within David's chest. They stumbled backward, moving towards the door, but it suddenly felt so far away, miles of dark space stretching between them and safety. With a trembling hand, David reached for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. He turned it feverishly, panic bubbling in his throat. It's locked. He fought against it, pulling with all his strength, but it stayed stubbornly in place. Try the window, Sarah shouted. She edged toward the grimy glass, her heart pounding, desperation taking over. But the window didn't yield either. Its frame cold and unyielding, as if it had been sealed by some malevolent force long ago. What the hell is happening? Melissa breathed, her voice trembling, reflecting the chaos inside her head. And that S when the whispers returned, rising like a tide from the dark corners of the room. They were louder now, filled with an anguish that sent icy fingers down David's spine. You awakened us, now you must join us. No. We won't. David shouted, turning to face the shadows that coalesced into spirals around them. Join us, the chorus echoed ominously, the voices intertwining in a haunting symphony that clawed at their sanity. Lights flickered overhead, casting erratic patterns around the room. Shadows danced across their faces, and David caught sight of trapped figures writhing in the corners of his vision, faces contorted in grief, mouths open in silent screams. Make it stop, Melissa cried. David's mind raced. What did we do wrong? He racked his brain, recalling the names they called out. Each name had echoed with desperation. Desperation which fueled the shadow's wrath. What if we can reverse it? What if we have to? David? Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts, panic radiating from every syllable. Behind you! He turned, but it was too late. The shadows lunged, rushing toward him, a tidal wave of darkness threatening to swallow them whole. He could feel cold fingers graze his arm, sending a jolt of icy terror through him. Run! He screamed, but fear locked them in place, paralyzed by the impending doom. Suddenly, a bright light sparked from the orb, its final flicker illuminating the room. The shadows paused, their form rippling like disturbed water. Offer, they hissed, an overlapped chant that clawed at David's ears. What? He gasped, bewildered. What do you want? Offer the truth, the sacrifice? Melissa whispered, the color draining from her face. What does that even mean? Before they could ponder further, shadowy limbs reached out, grasping at their clothes, pulling, insisting. The air vibrated with tension, and David saw it, a flickering glimpse of what lay beneath. Past tragedies, unfulfilled lives, souls in torment. Their presence felt heavy and suffocating. Then it hit him, something about the names, about their shared history with the orb, demanded an exchange. In this moment of chaos, realization dawned with clarity. To free the spirits, to break the cycle, they might have to become part of it. A scream pierced the air, and in that split second he understood. They weren't just fighting for their own survival. They were battling to alter fates untold. No, he cried, adrenaline surging. We won, but the shadows surged, darkness hungry for flesh. Melissa screamed again, and David felt terror welling up inside him like lava, ready to burst. Fight! We have to fight! He shouted, though his voice was almost lost in the deafening roar. As the shadows closed in, he clasped Melissa and Sarah's hands tightly. Whatever happens, don't let go. With that, they braced themselves together for the onslaught, hearts racing. As the whispers screamed again, join us, and all at once, the air exploded, light and darkness colliding, as the true horror of their choices came crashing down upon them. What awaited them in that chaotic dance of fate? Would they be consumed by the shadows or find a way to reclaim themselves? The explosion of light faded as quickly as it had come, plunging the room back into an oppressive darkness. David gritted his teeth, his heart pounding in his chest, each beat a chaotic alarm echoing the screams still lingering in his mind. They had braced for impact, but instead of the anticipated collision, a wave of calm swept through them, disorienting and surreal in the close quarters of terror. Is it over? Sarah's voice trembled, a whisper lost in the thick air. No, David said, feeling a chill seeping deeper into his bones. The shadows shifted, swirling like smoke. It was a cool, damp caress that slithered across the floor, pooling around their feet, waiting. Melissa tore her gaze from the dark mass looming near the walls, her eyes wide with fear. We need to keep moving. This isn't over. With a cautious step, she ventured towards the room's only exit, the door now appearing to them like a beacon of hope in the freezing gloom. Wait, David hissed, grabbing her wrist. What if we just end up making it worse? The whispers returned, a ghostly audience watching their every move, feeding off their uncertainty. Do you think we'll be safe anywhere else? Sarah shot back, her hands trembling in an attempt to gain some control over her fear. In that moment, the shadows thickened, a dark wall rising that seemed to swallow the light whole. The room felt like it was shrinking, closing in around them. The frigid air wrapped tighter, making it hard to breathe. Join us, the voice came clear from the center of dark. It sounded almost pleading, an ominous echo. To do otherwise is to suffer more. Stop, David shouted, but the sound pierced right through the thick air without effect. It was a desperate cry, one that felt lost. Join us, join us. Each word was like a dagger, seeing their inevitability, pressing against their sanity. Then it happened, a piercing dart of light suddenly shot from the corner of the room, throwing their shadows forward like grotesque caricatures of themselves. It illuminated one of the blackened corners, casting a spine-chilling glow on a figure that materialized from the dark. Eyes wide and empty, it silently screamed, a figure resembling a child with hollow cheekbones and a contorted mouth frozen in terror. David stumbled back, dragging Melissa and Sarah with him. What the hell is that? It's like Melissa began, her voice faltering. It's trapped here. Trapped, Sarah echoed, her brows knitting together. We have to help it. No, David snapped, dread rooting him in place. It could be a trick, a trap. We can't risk it. The shadowy figure hesitated, head tilting slowly as if understanding the weight of their choice. You awakened us, you can't walk away. It appeared almost motionless, yet in each beat, it seemed to extend towards them forward and back, a vile dance of despair. It was clear now, they held the power of freedom or fate in their hands. Melissa stepped closer, drawn to the figure despite the gnawing dread. As if sensing her vulnerability, shadowy tendrils flickered into life, surrounding her, wrapping around her wrist like fingerless gloves. "Don't!" David cried, reaching for her, but the darkness tightened, and she stopped. I need to know. We can't leave it. Do you really want to find out what happens if you try?" Sarah shouted, panic spilling over like a shaken soda can after being left on the counter too long. The air hummed with tension as shadows surged, pulling Melissa and forming a cold, clammy grip on her arm. Join us, the chant crescendoed, wrapping around them. "Melissa!" David felt the heat of her presence slip through his fingers, and fear consumed him. If he couldn't save her, could he save himself? He turned back towards the door, desperate to break away from the suffocating grip, but each attempt at escape morphed into a pull towards the inevitable. David felt sadness creep in as a new thought ignited a grim revelation of fatal choice, a sacrifice of their own reluctance. "Please," he shouted, feeling desperation clawing his throat. "Whatever you want, we'll face it together." The shadows paused, suspended as if considering his words, and for a heartbeat, time held its breath. Then the terrible laughter erupted, echoing through the room, wrapping around them like chains. "There's always a price." And with that, a new whisper emerged, edging closer to David's ear as he fell away into the abyss of darkness. "Your truth awaits," but just as hope flickered toward despair, something shifted in the air. The shadows tensed, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. What would the truth reveal? Would it purge their very souls or drag them even deeper into the darkness? The dance of fate was only beginning. David felt the overwhelming pressure of the darkness closing around him. Air turned thick, each breath a struggle, each heartbeat a reminder of their fragile existence. The shadows whispered, a haunting melody inviting him into an eternal void. "David?" Sarah's voice quivered, pulling at his unraveling sanity. "What do we do?" He glanced over at the shadowed figure, still locked in its agonizing freeze, seemingly caught between two worlds. Its eyes, though empty, reflected an eerie desperation, just like his own. "They're counting on us," Melissa said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. She tugged against the shadows as if she could break their grip with sheer will. "Please, we can help it." "No," David shouted again, frustration mingling with fear. "You're risking everything. We can't lose you too." The shadows pulsed, almost teasingly, as if they were listening to his every word. David could feel the air around him growing thick with a sense of foreboding, and the laughter still echoed, circling him like a predator. His thoughts raced. What was the truth? Would facing it free them or doom them forever? "She's right," Sarah burst out, lifting her chin defiantly. "Can't hurt to try. If we ignore it, we'll just be lost in this darkness." As the words left her mouth, the atmosphere in the room began to shift again. The oppressive weight lessened slightly, allowing a fleeting glimpse of hope to infect the trio. The grip on Melissa's arm loosened for just a fraction of a second, a crack in the icy facade. "Join us," the whispers returned, now more urgent, as if they sensed the shift in momentum, the sliver of hope. "The darkness only wants to be understood." What did that mean? Understand the darkness? David felt his head spin with the implications. "No." He clenched his fists. "You don't understand. This is not something to embrace." But Melissa's glimmer of resolve wavered, her gaze locked on the shadow child. "What if we can free it? What if we can reclaim it?" David took a step back, fighting every fiber of instinct that urged him to bolt toward the exit. He was trapped, caught in a web of uncertainty woven by whispers and shadow. "David!" Sarah's eyes pleaded, desperation flooding her voice. "You have to help us." "Help?" he barked, echoing fear and anguish. All we would be doing is inviting whatever this is deeper into our lives. Suddenly, there was a shift. The shadows recoiled as if stung, the air thickening again. You fear what you do not understand, join us, stop. David yelled, fury igniting in his veins. You can't scare me. We're not yours. He took another step back, moving instinctively toward the door, hoping the resolve was contagious. Melissa gasped. David, please. If the thing is suffering, a keening wail filled the room, a haunting sound reverberating off the walls and vibrating in his bones. The child's figure fluctuated, its form wavering. The shadows pulsed more violently now, a tempest eager to consume them whole. Join us. It echoed again, the voice steeped in torment and longing. What if we become trapped too? David snapped back, heart aching for both Melissa and the figure before them. But the thought gnawed at him, what if they could save it? He felt the ground shaking beneath his feet, vibrating with a truth that clawed at fragile hope. The shadows quivered, a wave crashing towards them. And in the eye of that maelstrom, something flickered between visibility and obscurity. Your truth awaits. The whisper came again, closer, a venomous promise. In the next moment, time fractured, stretching into an unbearable silence. David, caught at the edge of a precipice, struggled with what he knew was coming. Could he still save Melissa? The truth of that question felt heavier than any shadow. Then the lights flickered, a burst of illumination promising reprieve, only to extinguish as a thunderous roar erupted from the darkness. In that split second, David made his choice. But was it the right one? The atmosphere surged once more as the very fabric of reality threatened to tear. What lay beyond that doorway? And would their truth salvage them or bury them alive? David's heart pounded against his ribs, each thud a reminder that he was still alive, still clinging to a thread of hope. But hope was brittle here, fragile as the darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. He felt the pull of the shadows, the way they beckoned not just him, but Sarah and Melissa too, promising release from their torment if only they would step forward. David! Sarah's voice trembled, a mixture of fear and something else. Resolve? Please, don't. His fingers fumbled against the door's frame, knuckles white with tension. I won't let you. We can't trust. The shadows erupted like wild flames, surging forward, and with them came that unearthly wail, sharper now, piercing through to their very souls. The figure shimmered like a mirage, trapped between despair and longing. A child, yes, but not just any child. This entity carried so much pain, like a dark riptide threatening to drown anything that drew close. Melissa stepped forward, defiance written across her features as she squared herself against the tide of creeping night. We have to help it. Can't you see it's hurting? David could feel the weight of her determination, but it rubbed against his instincts like sandpaper. And what if it drags us down with it? We don't even know what it is. But pity twisted within him, was that really just a shadow? Or could it be a lost soul, seeking something? Silence thickened the air around them. Only the thrumming of his heart broke it, a rhythmic reminder of the urgency of their choice. Sarah, tell her, he urged, desperation leaking through his clenched teeth. Tell her it's not worth it. I want to understand, Sarah whispered. I want to help it find peace. The room shuddered as if the walls themselves trembled in anticipation, and David felt the heat of the shadows wrapping tighter around them, drawing them closer to the figure that flickered in the dark. Understand? The voice, lilting and vacant, came again, resonating in a way that made his skin crawl. Join us, save us. The air thickened, each breath now so precious, each second weighed down by dread. David's mind raced. He could hear the echoes of his own fears, the whisperings of the past, a mourning of things that couldn't be undone. Don't, he shouted, trying to break through the haze of despair. Every instinct screamed for him to withdraw, to drag them both back from the edge. We'll end up like that thing. We need to leave. But just then, a sudden flash of blinding light erupted like a lighthouse beacon, illuminating the horrific scene. Shadows skittered back, evaporating like mist before the dawn. And there, in the center of the light, the shadow child stood bare and weeping, a form crafted from all their hidden fears and regrets. Please, its voice quivered with a childlike echo, reaching out with hands made of darkness, yearning. In that moment, time seemed to slip away, and David realized it wasn't just a choice of who to save or what to confront. It was about confronting their own pasts, their own shadows. David? Melissa's voice was now an urgent whisper, laced with fear. What do we do now? The light dimmed, and David felt the ground trembling again. But this time, a different kind of darkness loomed. A void that threatened not just their lives, but their very souls. He could feel it echoing around them, waiting, ready to devour what little light remained. Get back, he yelled, pushing against the encroaching shadows as if he could physically fend them off, clenching his fists so tightly that his fingernails dug deep into his palms. The weight of the darkness was suffocating. But as he moved, they all noticed the flicker of interest from the shadow child. Its gaze locked onto David, and in its swirling depths, he saw not just despair but a promise. In that second, his heart raced. Could he confront the darkness within himself? What if understanding it meant bringing about their own salvation? And then, just as quickly, the pinprick of light faded, swallowed whole. David! A chorus of cries filled the air, but it was too late. What awaited them now in the dark? And would uncovering the truth lead them to freedom or damnation? The shadows pressed in around David, swirling so closely, he could feel their cold essence on his skin. He had made an impossible choice, one that now hung between them like a thick fog. In the eerie quiet, a flicker of sunlight broke through, illuminating the chaos unfolding before him. A soft glow radiated from the childlike figure, drawing their attention. It trembled, caught in a web of sorrow that was as deep as the shadows that surrounded it. David, what do we do? Sarah's voice trembled with both fear and anticipation, a plea echoing in the dense silence. Stay close, he ordered, but deep down, panic gnawed at him. Would it be enough to keep his family safe? As if fueled by their desperation, the shadows surged, bending with an energy that shrieked for attention. David could feel their hunger, how they yearned to consume everything in their path. In contrast, the figure of the child flickered brighter, the light offering a promise of salvation but at a cost. Please help us. The voice was a whisper, soft as silk yet sharp enough to cut through the thick tension. You must embrace the truth, only then will the shackles break. Melissa stepped forward, defiance glimmering in her eyes. What do you want from us? She cried out, her voice breaking. What truth can save you? The figure's features twisted, revealing sorrowful eyes that beckoned with the weight of countless lost souls. Your truth is tied to our fate, it murmured, the shadows rippling in response. Only together can we heal. David's heart raced as he realized the gravity of their situation. They were bound to this place, to the spirits trapped within those walls. There was no running, no escape from the choices they made and the lives they had touched. What had they awakened? Help us find peace, the figure implored, almost desperately, and in that moment, the cadence of the shadows softened. Tension filled the air, and it felt as if time itself stood still. For David, the walls of the room began to fade, replaced by vivid images, the fragments of lives lost, memories of laughter and sorrow intertwined. Together, he whispered, a bond of hope rising within him. We must do it together. As he turned to Sarah and Melissa, he saw determination in their eyes. They had fought with fear long enough. It was finally time to fight for freedom. Okay, Sarah breathed, stepping in front of the others. We need to face what we've done. David nodded, feeling the weight of their resolve lift slightly, even as the shadows danced menacingly around them, threatening to pull them back into darkness. I will call out the names, he said, feeling gratitude surge through him for the two standing beside him. Together, we all do this together. With the group gathered closely, he began, grounding himself in the flicker of light radiating from the figure that stood before them. Each name was steeped in history, a pact forged in sorrow. Catherine, he murmured, the name spilling from his lips like a prayer. Jared, Storm, Samuel. Each name erupted with a spark of energy, illuminating the very fabric of the shadows as they recoiled, hissing and writhing. "Yours is but a part of the truth," David shouted, the words cascading from his throat like a torrent. He felt the presence of the child grow stronger, resonating deep inside him. "Now," Melissa urged, her fierce voice cutting through the chaos. "Together. One last time." Evelyn, Tate, Fiona, Sarah's voice rang out beside him, joining in unison. Their collective calling stirred the shadows, and with each resonating name, they felt the tremors of the room pulsing, quaking under the force of their bravery. It was no longer just about the child, it was about reclaiming lost lives, healing broken bonds. The air crackled, alive with electricity and raw emotion. "Enough!" A voice shrieked from the depths of the darkness, the shadows lashing out in ferocious protest, but they stood steadfast. The shadows twisted like a desperate entity, yet David could feel the light enveloping them, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The truth revealed, the figure spoke, the glow, brightening as they delivered the final names, voices intertwining, forming a powerful crescendo of hope. "We remember you." As they spoke the last name, silence fell upon the chamber. The shadows trembled, swirling in chaotic patterns before coiling back, shrinking under the weight of their memories. One by one, flickers of faces emerged from the chaotic sea, all bound by grief yet illuminated by the growing light. Embracing one another, the trio shared a fleeting glance steeped in understanding, their fears momentarily subsiding. Yet as the brightness intensified, an ominous rumble echoed from the darkness. A warning growl reverberated through the shadows. "You think you've won?" The voice hissed, anger boiling beneath the surface. "The truth always demands a price, then let it be ours," David shouted, unwilling to let fear creep back in. "We will bear it, whatever it takes. You will not drag us down." With a final burst of light, the shadows shivered, twisting violently before dwindling before their eyes. The air took on a transformative warmth, the weight of despair easing. In a final flicker, the child's face brightened, the tears fading as it smiled, a soft, tender light slowly pouring into the room. "Your truth has set me free," it whispered before vanishing completely, leaving behind a legacy of light where darkness had reigned. And just like that, silence enveloped them, a peaceful void like a warm embrace. "What just happened?" Sarah panted, her eyes wide as she scanned the room. The walls that were once heavy with sorrow now lifted, shimmering with an ethereal glow. "I think," David said, voice hushed with disbelief, "we found our truth. We set them free." As dawn broke outside, spilling soft light through the old windows, the chaos of the night faded. They were left with something different, an understanding that echoed beneath the surface. Together they forged ahead, leaving behind not just the haunted memories, but the assurance that they would carry the light of those forever remembered. The path ahead stretched endlessly, full of possibilities as they walked out of that cursed home and into the lifelight of a new day. And in the quiet spaces of their hearts, they knew true freedom had not only been found, it had been embraced. If you felt the rush of emotions through this thrilling conclusion, this is the moment to show your support. Make sure you subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the good vibes rolling. And I need you to flood that comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending, because your voice is what drives us forward. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because true fans like you understand how vital your support is.